Hotshot Racing is a racing title very clearly aiming to throw back to the late and great arcade racing classics of yesteryear, but how well does it accomplish that feat in 2020? I was given a code through the game's publisher to see just how well it does that. Developed by Lucky Mountain Games alongside the famed Sumo Digital, Hotshot Racing was known previously as Racing Apex, a similar pitch but with weapons in the mix instead. The final game here omits that specific idea and leaves it purely to the racing. The word of the day here is solid. Every time you hear me use it today, try to take a relaxing breath. Got it? Okay, going right along here. The real key to it all is the game's solid driving feel. You pick one of a few drivers and then select which of their 4 cars suits you best, with stats favoring top speed, acceleration, and drift handling. If you've played a Sumo Digital racing title before, like the Sonic All-Stars games, the way this game feels to play will be rather familiar. Your car feels light with a forgiving turning radius, but the real meat and fun of the driving comes into play with the drifts. Tapping the brake button going into a turn brings you back to those all-so-familiar Sumo drifts, and a lot of the enjoyment comes from mastering how much you need to lean into a turn on top of learning the courses themselves. Another useful mechanic is trailing any other racers in front of you to catch their slipstream, speeding you up and providing you the opportunity to skillfully get ahead of them. Drifting and slipstreams will also build up your boost gauge over time. The more you do of each, the more you can bank, with the max being 4 boosts. Adding an extra layer of challenge on top of this is that drifting and colliding into a wall will make you lose some of the drift you've earned, as well as likely causing you to spin out and lose precious time, so mastering the drift is a necessary skill. It's particularly necessary on the game's higher difficulties, as this game's AI doesn't care that you have ambitions, dreams, or even a 401k. These racers will end you if you aren't prepared. The game's challenge is pretty comfortable on normal difficulty. Oddly, despite its name, it's the easiest option available. This is definitely the mode for those who just want to absorb the sights and take it easy. On hard, it starts to become a requirement to learn where you can drift and slipstream as much as possible. And on expert, well, I'm not good enough for expert yet. Expert is making sure that I'm going to have to put a lot of time into this game to get all of its trophies, because my performance on those races is pitiful. The races themselves take place across 16 courses set across 4 different biomes, some of which feature further variety as being the fire stage or the ice stage, without ice controls, thankfully. Each of the 16 tracks are rather pleasant, thanks a lot in part due to nailing the early polygon look and having plenty of appealing set dressing. Not many of the courses take more than a couple minutes or so to finish on top of that, making each race breezy, assuming you're running on the typical 3-lap structure at least. The vibrancy of the colors and positive environments really help set the proper tone for the game. Graphically, it really doesn't do too much beyond sit neatly on a spectrum between retro and indie. That's sort of the name of the game here, folks. Hotshot Racing is what it says it is on the tin, essentially. If this video has felt a bit dry and standard so far, that's because Hotshot is a pretty easy game to explain. It's classic arcade racing with a bit of a modern feel. The game has 4 Grand Prix circuits with 3 difficulties, each of the 4 circuits using 1 track from each of the 4 biomes to help shake up the aesthetics of the cups. There are time trials, a few extra game modes in arcade mode like cops and robbers, and an online mode that seems sparse population-wise but works mostly without a hitch once you're in there. But it's all the sort of stuff you'd expect from a racing title. Hotshot Racing's Achilles heel is that it's so derivative that it doesn't have much flavor of its own. And that's not really meant as a knock. I think that's clearly the goal here. And if you found this video from searching online, that's probably exactly what you hope to hear. The major downsides to that lack of personal identity are that it makes a review like this a bit dry, and that it might risk leaving Hotshot Racing forgotten in about a year or 2. Ironically, while removing the initial game's weapons idea may have made for a better gameplay experience here, it might have helped it stand out a bit more on its own if they had kept that. One leftover of that old design are the game's characters I mentioned earlier, and I think they do help provide at least a bit of unique flavor here. From a man who wonders out loud during races if he can find a baby car chair for the back for his newborn, to a racer that is most likely an android robot, their quips during races and their GP story epilogues at least help the affair leave a bit of a mark by the end of it. I do like them, and they help set the game apart from its many recent contemporaries. I don't have many actual complaints about the game, really. I wish the lap count and race position numbers were a bit easier to read at a split-second glance. I have to spend a half second or so longer to identify if I'm the lead or not in a pinch, and if the numbers were a bit bigger and in the top left corner, it might help some. My other complaint is one that, admittedly, just comes with the territory in these games, but no matter which car or driver you pick, it feels like you're lighter than the other racers, meaning that at inopportune times they will wreck into you and send you out of whack, but also that there's too much risk on your end to think about attempting to give a love tap back during a race. The inconsistency can just be frustrating during already tense moments in races, especially on the higher difficulties. But aside from those minor gripes, Hotshot Racing is pretty darn good. Ironically, out of all the recent arcade throwback games, it's the one I was paying the least attention to, but out of them all, it's the one I feel most positively about and enjoyed the most. I just wish there was more to say about it other than, yep, it's the game you probably hope it is if you're here watching this review, and yep, it's absolutely worth grabbing and playing. It does so little out of the norm and on its own that there really isn't much to criticize. The amount of content is good for the asking price, it feels good to play, it's very pleasant to look at and listen to, just all around it's a solid time if you need an arcade racing game to scratch that itch. It's odd to hope for a sequel to a game like this, but if the teams behind it reunite for another crack at it, I really look forward to what they come up with next, now that they have an incredibly solid foundation to build from. If you've played it, let me know what you think about it, or better yet, let me know some other similar games you've enjoyed recently that attempt similar things. I know someone's going to mention Horizon Chase Turbo, I really need to put more time into it. Anyway, that's all from me. If you're curious about another game that does what Hotshot Racing does, but from a much smaller indie team, check out my video on Formula Retro Racing from back in June. A big thanks as always to my lovely patrons, especially Goldstorm07, Buckles Chucklo, Jeet, The Crazy Even, The Legend of Groose, Patrick Thompson, Sven Delica, Wolf Chaos On, Joey, and Harry. Y'all are MVPs.